Why do we make the choices we do? Not just the big ones, like quitting a job, ending a relationship, or investing in a new idea, but the small, silent decisions that shape the course of our lives, the ones we barely notice, the ones we make when no one's watching, the ones that seem logical till they're not. But deep beneath the surface, in the shadows of our minds, something else is steering the ship. Emotions, biases, past experiences, even our unspoken fears. It's not just psychology, it's a psychological mirror. One that dares us to look closer at our habits, our patterns, and the hidden machinery behind even the simplest of choices. What if I told you that every decision you've ever made, every yes, every no, every maybe, was never purely rational to begin with? We like to believe we're logical creatures. We weigh facts, analyze outcomes, and come to the best conclusion through stories, research, and piercing insights. He shows that decision-making isn't a sterile, step-by-step process. It's messy, emotional, and deeply human. And that's exactly why it matters. This is the haunting brilliance of The Psychology of Decision-Making by Leroy Beach, a book that peels back the polished mask of human logic and shows us what's really going on underneath. Beach doesn't lecture, he reveals. Because if we don't understand how we make decisions, we risk living lives designed by illusions, chasing goals that aren't truly ours, making mistakes we could have seen coming, and repeating patterns we swore we'd outgrow. So let's dive in, not just into a book, but into the mind itself. Its beauty, its flaws, and its wild, unpredictable logic. This is The Psychology of Decision-Making, and it just might change how you live the rest of your life. The book doesn't open with a dramatic tale or a fictional hero. It begins with you, standing at a crossroads you didn't even know existed. Leroy Beach quietly pulls back the curtain on a universal truth. Our lives are shaped more by our decisions than by the circumstances we face. And yet, most of us don't truly understand how we decide. Instead of imagining decision-making as cold calculations and flawless logic, Beach paints a very different picture. One filled with mental shortcuts, emotional storms, and internal tug-of-wars. It's not about choosing the best option. He introduces what he calls the image theory, a bold alternative to the mechanical, step-by-step decision models that dominate business schools and management books. It's about choosing what feels right, what aligns with our internal story, what we can live with, even if it's not perfect. And here's where the real tension begins. We are taught from a young age that rationality is king, that a good decision is a logical one, but Beach flips that on its head. In image theory, decisions aren't made by ranking options or running cost-benefit analyses as prestige, but something feels off. And without fully understanding why, you say no, Beach would say. Your internal image rejected it. It didn't align with your values or the story you're trying to live. They're made through a personal filter, a mental image of who we are, what we value, and what kind of future we envision. Instead, they come from alignment, from inner harmony between who we are and what we choose. If an option clashes with that internal image, it's discarded, quickly, often unconsciously, or fractured, like well-worn paths in a forest. Easy to walk, hard to leave. And while they may seem harmless, Beach warns us, they shape our identity more than we realize. We begin to explore what happens when our values clash with our goals. Fear clouds our plans, and we don't know who we are. And the decisions become harder than ever. And the ones that fit, they stay on the table. It shows how decision-making is a human experience filled with uncertainty, bias, memory, and meaning. That filter, our internal image, is made up of 3 parts, especially when it's tied to fear, anger, or insecurity. Values. Deeply held beliefs that define what's right, wrong, or worth pursuing when we just know something is off. It's not magic, it's memory, it's meaning. We twist facts, cherry-pick evidence, and construct a post-decision narrative to make ourselves feel better. Not because we're dishonest, but because we're human. The ones you've avoided, the ones that haunt you, the ones that guide 90% of our days. From the coffee we drink, to how we respond in meetings, to how we treat our loved ones. It's about screening out the wrong ones, those that contradict who we believe we are. A motivator. Sometimes, yes, a saboteur. But ignoring it is like flying blind. It's a lens. Way to understand not just what you do, but who you are. Trajectory. The long-term goals or path we imagine for ourselves. Effortless. Even obvious. But it's often invisible. We don't see how our core images silently veto possibilities before they even reach our conscious minds. Plans. The concrete steps and strategies that help us move forward. Beach reveals that the decision-making process isn't about finding the best choice. And here's the paradox. This process feels natural. Take a job offer, for example. On paper, it pays more, offers benefits. This reframing is powerful because it challenges the myth that great decisions come from spreadsheets, lists, or sheer logic. But what happens when that inner image is fuzzy? This is where Beach takes us deeper, into the territory of conflict, confusion, and cognitive dissonance. And this is the brilliance of the book's structure. It doesn't give easy answers, it gives mirrors. As we move further, Beach unveils the power of habitual decisions, the kind we make without thinking. These decisions aren't made in the traditional sense, they're executed, because the habits we repeat become the people we are. But then there's another layer, one that adds both beauty and danger. Emotion. Most decision-making theories avoid emotion like a contagion. They treat it as noise, distraction, something to overcome. But Beach, he embraces it. He shows that emotion isn't just a side effect of decision-making. It's a central force, a compass, a warning system. Through compelling examples and psychological studies, Beach demonstrates how our gut feelings, our intuitive reactions, often come from deep wells of experience and unconscious pattern recognition. But emotion is a double-edged sword. It can blind us, trap us, lead us into decisions we later regret. And that's when Beach introduces the concept of justification. We rarely admit when we make decisions emotionally, so we create stories, rationalizations, to make them look logical. And in those stories, we begin to see the hidden battle between truth and comfort. By the time you reach the middle of the book, something strange begins to happen. You start to see your own life differently, the choices you've made. You begin to realize that decision-making isn't just a skill. That's exactly where Beach wants you. On the edge of discomfort, staring into your own mental mirror, because what comes next will change everything. As we step into the second half of the psychology of decision-making, the terrain grows deeper, darker, not in tone, but in truth. It's here that Leroy Beach shifts the spotlight from how decisions are made to why they sometimes go so disastrously wrong. The question isn't whether we're capable of good decision-making, it's whether we can resist the invisible forces pulling us off course. And chief among those forces is bias. Beach doesn't just list them, he reveals them. Biases like confirmation bias, anchoring, and the sunk cost fallacy are no longer abstract ideas. They become personal. Cognitive biases, the mental shortcuts we all rely on, are exposed like cracks in the foundation of our thinking. You start to see them everywhere. That time, you clung to a failing relationship because of how much time you'd already invested. Sunk cost. That moment you ignored new evidence because it didn't fit what you already believed. Confirmation bias. That decision you made too quickly because of the first number you heard. Anchoring. These aren't quirks, they're traps. Silent, sophisticated, and utterly human. But Beach doesn't stop at individual bias. He zooms out into the world of group decisions, teams, committees, families, governments, and what he uncovers is haunting. The pressure to conform, to avoid conflict, to maintain harmony, it leads to groupthink, where critical thinking is sacrificed for consensus. Stories where silence caused catastrophe, where no one wanted to be that person. Where intuition screamed something's wrong, but logic was overruled by fear. We make decisions we can justify to ourselves and others. This is subtle, but revolutionary. Even in rooms full of brilliant people, terrible decisions are made. Our identity, who we believe we are, guides our decisions more than any spreadsheet ever could. If I see myself as loyal, I stay in situations long past their expiration. If I see myself as bold, I take risks that others would never touch. They're about story, It's about crafting a narrative where we can live with the consequences, where we, Dan T, feel foolish, weak, or wrong. We're storytellers, weaving meaning into the chaos of choice. Not because we, Dan T, know what to do, but because we're afraid to take responsibility for the aftermath. Not because no one knows better, but because no one speaks up. Because when humans gather to decide, they often become less rational, not more. Beach gives us stories, studies, and scenarios, each one more chilling than the last. And in these chapters, we begin to feel the emotional weight of decision-making, the loneliness of leadership, the burden of choice, the ache of regret, but then a turning point. And often the cost of avoiding a decision is far greater than making the wrong one. Beach shifts the conversation toward wisdom, toward resilience, toward how we can begin to decide better. He introduces the concept of decision justification theory, the idea that we, Dan T, make decisions purely to achieve outcomes, because it means that many of our choices aren't about success or failure. And if justification is the engine, then self-concept is the steering wheel. A call to self-honesty, challenge to be deliberate, and understanding how you make them might just change everything. To understand that decision-making is not a skill reserved for executives or philosophers, it is the essence of living. Every day, every moment, every yes, no, and not yet. Beach is relentless in reminding us. We are not decision-making machines. You feel the emotional tug of a story you're telling yourself, and slowly, you begin to interrupt it. And then comes one of the most powerful insights of the entire book. A truth so simple, it hurts. Making no decision is also a decision. Inaction is not neutral, it is a choice with consequences, just like action. We put off hard conversations, delay bold moves, postpone endings we know are overdue. But Beach offers hope. Not in the form of easy tricks or five-step methods, but in clarity. He teaches us to examine our values, to refine our internal image, to ask hard questions. What kind of person do I want to be? What future am I moving toward? What story will I be proud to tell later? These questions don't lead to perfect decisions, but they lead to authentic ones. By the final chapters, the reader feels changed. Not because the book delivers answers, but because it sharpens awareness. You begin to see decisions forming in real time. You recognize when you're falling into bias. You take back agency. And maybe, for the first time, you begin to choose with both eyes open. The book ends not with a dramatic flourish, but with quiet power. Because in the end, your decisions are your legacy. There are no traditional characters in the psychology of decision-making. No protagonist, no villain. And yet, the most compelling figure in the entire narrative is you. It doesn't study humans from a distance. It invites you to look inward, to trace the shape of your own mental landscape. You are the decision-maker, the flawed hero of this psychological journey, and that's what makes Leroy Beach's work so quietly profound. At the core of this book lies a powerful theme. We are the stories we tell ourselves about our choices. They depend on them. Every choice becomes a mirror, a thread woven into the fabric of who we are. Are we bold, cautious, selfless, strategic? The answer is rarely found in what we believe. It's written in what we choose. Our identities, fragile, evolving, deeply personal, don't just influence our decisions. And so, decision-making is never just cognitive. It's emotional, ethical, even spiritual. One of the book's most haunting themes is this: we want to be right more than we want to grow. It offers meaning. In modern life, this rings especially true. From careers to relationships to daily routines, we face an endless stream of micro-decisions. And each one carries a subtle weight. The fear of missing out, the anxiety of choosing wrong. And that takes far more than intelligence. It takes character. We like to believe we're rational, objective beings. But with awareness, reflection, and honesty, we can learn how to choose in a way that reflects who we truly are. But Beach dismantles this myth. He shows how our minds are riddled with shortcuts, heuristics that save time but steal accuracy. Someone who chooses with eyes open, heart steady, and a deep understanding of what's truly at stake. And when we recognize this, something powerful happens. We stop blaming ourselves for being flawed and start learning how to think better. This bias, the hunger to preserve our ego, corrupts our ability to learn from our decisions. It's easier to justify a bad call than to admit we were wrong. It's easier to double down than to pivot. And Leroy Beach wants you to own every single one. But growth demands humility. The courage to look at our own mental blind spots and say, I missed something. Another recurring theme is the illusion of control. A way to look at your life not as a string of random events, but as a deliberate path shaped by your values, your fears, your blind spots, and your courage. There's beauty in that. Beach also unpacks the paradox of choice. The idea that too many options don't liberate us, they paralyze us. But the book doesn't just stir anxiety, because the ultimate theme, the one that pulses quietly beneath every chapter, is this. Decision-making is an act of courage. To decide is to commit, to close a door, to accept consequences, to embrace uncertainty. It's about honesty, self-awareness, and the strength to sit in the discomfort of uncertainty without flinching. It reminds us that no one can teach us what to choose. Or wondered why smart people sometimes make such devastating mistakes. A standout quote captures this spirit perfectly. We do not decide for outcomes, we decide for integrity. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories like this to life and keeps the wisdom flowing. In the end, it's not about perfect decisions. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't run from them. Your life is the sum of your decisions. When you turn the final page of The Psychology of Decision-Making, something lingers. It's not a technique or a tip. It's a quiet question that begins to echo inside you. What kind of decision maker am I? Really, Leroy Beach doesn't just give you knowledge, he gives you a mirror. Because every fork in the road, every job you took, every relationship you entered or left, every risk you avoided or embraced, they weren't just moments. They were acts of creation. You were building a self. And this book gently, powerfully asks you to take responsibility for that construction. It reminds us that good decision-making isn't about IQ. Who should read this book? It's anyone who's ever questioned their past, felt paralyzed by a choice. Anyone who wants to make fewer decisions by default and more by design. Whether you're a leader, a student, an artist, a parent, or simply someone walking the tightrope of modern life, this book will ground you. It will wake you up. Because once you begin to see your decisions as stories you live and write in real time, you will stop rushing them. You'll begin to honor them. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start making decisions that not only make sense, but feel right. If this story moved you, challenged your thinking, or simply sparked your curiosity, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for being part of the journey.